People decide. Well, I guess man did make the laws. No, man didn't make the laws. The laws, if they're right because they're right regardless of who made them. If they're wrong regardless of who made them or how they were made. Principle doesn't change because of majority whim. Truth is truth regardless of how many people believe in it. Now I'll tell you something. When you find yourself on the side of the majority, get out. You're wrong. Anytime you find yourself on the side of the majority, check your premises. I'll tell you, the day the most people in the world become Christian, I'm going to check it over. I don't think I have a real worry. But, man, I got to cut those asides out. They're getting me off my track today. I haven't been so disorganized. Well, we're back in Rome again. So the Senate had their election. They were going to decide these things. Before they had the election, the Senate, very kindly and loving the citizens of Rome, gave them 300,000 welfare checks. You know, the Senate won. People agreed the Senate was quite nice. But then people found out something. Their taxes went up more than the welfare check. That's not so good. See, only taxpayers were voting. Taxpayers weren't going to support the next round, were they? So they came up with a new game of saying, and look, servants, after all, are people. They live in our homes. They're practically members of the family. Most of them have been with us for generations. They should vote. Why? Servants didn't pay taxes, you see, and there were more of them. They could outvote the taxpayers. How can you steal? Taxpayers keep doing all the voting. Remember in our country, when it was founded, only white male property owners could vote. That was undemocratic, wasn't it? Why did our founding fathers only allow white male property owners to vote? Because only white male property owners paid taxes. Notice, taxpayers don't vote for crooks. Non-taxpayers vote for crooks. Taxpayers won't vote for crooks. The idea was no taxation without representation, and no representation without taxation. If you don't put your money in the pot, you keep your mouth shut. I mean, even those of you people who play poker know that. You don't draw cards unless you got your ante in. Right? You see, when you have the people who don't pay taxes vote, they vote for stealing. Taxpayers don't vote for crooks. Non-taxpayers do. So then the servants, you see, yes, they should vote. So they started voting, but the servants found out their masters were going broke. Because now the total welfare program got bigger and bigger, and the servants things were getting worse around the house. They lived there too. And so they started siding with their masters. That's not so good. The senators came up and they said, look, the slaves, they're people too. They should vote. They didn't pay taxes, you see. But then they enfranchised the slaves. Then they enfranchised the people in the colonies. And they enfranchised everybody in the empire eventually. And what happened? The number of people to pay before every election time became bigger and bigger and bigger. The second is these people wanted more than they got last time. Every year it had to go up. The take had to go up. See, you had more people to pay. I got the coffee signal. See, we got more people to pay, and we got to pay them more each time. The tax rate must go up even faster, mustn't it? Every time there's an increase in taxes, some of the businessmen, the farmers, who were just making it before now went under, couldn't pay the taxes. When they couldn't pay the taxes, the state seized their business, seized their farm for payment of taxes. This meant that you had more people on the take because these people went down the road and joined the mob, put their hand out for the government to feed them, didn't they? And that meant more people to feed and less people to tax. So the tax rates even had to go up higher. In a short period of time, Rome, the taxes went to 110% of net worth annually. That means direct confiscation of all private property. Now, what now? You had the big mob in the street, all demanding. After all, isn't it the government's job to feed us, to clothe us, and take care of us? It's the government's job. After all, you've told us this. You've told us that you're going to take care of everything. But the government found out something. With nobody growing and nobody producing, there wasn't anything to feed the people with. And they said, don't you know how much we love you? Haven't we given you all of this free? Don't you love us? And they said, we want your blood or we want bread. Oh, you can't demand our blood. We've taken care of you. We love you. But the mob didn't think much about love. They were hungry. They wanted to eat. And what did the Senate have to do? It had to call in the legion to put down the mob. And the legion marched in beautiful array. In a very short period of time, Skyla had put down the mob. And they said, thank you, Consul. That's the name for General. Thank you, Consul, for saving Rome. Very patriotic of you. We want to commend you. And the general said, you know, fellas, I think you got the name wrong. It's Emperor. Now you boys can play the little Senate game. You run your little election play, and you have all your little fun up there. But don't do anything unless I tell you it's okay. Or, there's never been a democracy that hasn't ended up in a police state. And unless a democracy is eliminated by its reversal, it will end up in a total dictatorial police state with total economic collapse. It is inevitable. Plato told you this 3,000 years ago. The Romans proved it 2,000 years ago. England has proven it. We're proving it at a very rapid rate. Democracy always ends up in robbery of one citizen to the other. The citizens doing the robbery eventually rob the citizens they're robbing out, and then they cannot survive, and collapse and chaos is inevitable. The police state is the only solution to the problem. Martial law of the bayonet. You cannot solve problems by democracy, but by its absence. Notice in England today, taxation of people earning, let me get my figure straight, more than $60,000 a year is in excess of 100% of earnings. Don't worry, there were only 5 people in England last year who earned $35,000. In England today, the average age of the machinery is 47 years old. In England today, over 50% of the population live totally off a government check. This means that every man must feed another who isn't working. With machinery 47 years old. England is all through. It is in total collapse. And there is no monetary revaluing that can save it. For it has socialism. And socialism is the disease, the cancer that erodes any society. We're going to have to take a coffee break. My friend here, who is going to be the number one. Look at what a glutton for punishment. He came right back. I want him to stand up and take a little bow. You see, our founding fathers looked at it this way. They said, look, what kind of rights should a man have? I'm going to do something that is not tolerated in liberal circles, and that is, I'm going to define justice. I'm old-fashioned, you see. I believe there is a thing called truth, and I think there's a thing called lie. I believe there's a thing called right, and there's a thing called wrong. There's moral and immoral. There's just and unjust. And I think they can be accurately and precisely defined. One of the games we get in schools today is a game like this, and I had this from my philosophy professor. Watch this sort of thinking, and you wonder why we're in the trouble we're in. You see this thing here is called a table. Now, it isn't really a table. We only put the name table on it. It's a thing we say has tableness. Now, you see, though it has the ability to serve as a table, we're not really even sure whether it is a table, or we're not really sure whether that table is even there. Why are we not sure whether that table is there or not? Because we can't prove whether we're here or not. And if we can't prove whether we're here or not, how do we know whether that table is there or not? Now, we can run into that table, we can bite on it, we can sit on it, but still we are not certain of the existence of the table, no more than we're certain of the existence of anything, including truth. Therefore, it is impossible to even conceive of anything being really right or wrong, good or evil, that all things are relative. That is, everything is in kind of a gray mirage. to where none of us can really decide our own actions with any precision. It just depends what is in our heart right now that makes things moral or immoral. Notice our new morality. Our new morality goes something like this. You see, if I would injure this man out of hatred for him, that would be immoral. But if I did it for the good of mankind, that would be moral. It isn't the act that I do that is moral or immoral, it's why I do it. If I am doing honestly what is in my heart, then it's moral. Boy, isn't that a great license for anything? Huh? This isn't morality or immorality, it's the absence of morality. It's amorality. There is no morality. It is the denial of even a moral concept, of even can exist. Do you want to know why the suicide rate is 400% among college students of the general population? What else? There is no divine, there is no purpose, there is no nothing. It's just you can get here in this world and it's all dirty and evil, and what can you do? Put a rope around your head like the 4 students at Indiana University one semester, tied it to the girder in this field house and took a leap off the 33rd tier. What else? They are told that there's nothing you can believe, there's nothing you can know, there's no right or wrong, there's no true and false, there are no answers to anything. And they call that an education. That's a brain laundry. Let's get the name right for it. See, I'm kind of not very bright. I guess I went to college for 11 years. I survived. That's because I don't believe anything I was taught. The problem with the average youth is real problem, and this is the thing. I had at University of Detroit, where I was teaching one time, my whole class went in to complain to the dean. The whole class marched over. And you know what their complaint was? The dean came down and he said, you won't believe it. You won't believe what the complaint was. You know what the complaint of the students were? Dr. Crane required them to think. I wouldn't accept the answers that they had memorized in the book. And it was unfair. I required them to reason their answers. Thinking is not tolerated. An educated man is a man who has learned to discern, who has learned to challenge, to criticize, and to analyze, not want to absorb and feed back. That's what a tape recorder does. You buy them for $100, and they're much more reliable. You can't beat the tape recorder. That's why I say don't take notes. Tape recorder is much more efficient. You know, the professor who was, professors nowadays spend very little time on campus. He's always off with some government agency somewhere or other. And this one professor, he put all of his lectures on tape, and he had a student assistant go in, every time in class and turn on the tape recorder and put on the right tape. And one day, quite late in the semester, he inadvertently, for some reason, found himself on campus. And he decided to go over and find out how his class was doing, just for curiosity, and he looked in there, and there was his tape recorder playing real well, and 35 other tape recorders on record. Well, that's the way most students go to school anyway. It's heartwarming when you ever find a student. I call the rest of them enrollees. They pay my wages, You don't knock them because, I just tell them, just sit there and just keep paying the tuition. Well, I forget, here in California, you've got total thinkism. You've reached the epitome of folly. And one thing about California, whenever they're going to do anything, they can do it worse than anyone. They don't believe in halfway measures. I like to see that. Anyway, I started out on something there. Well, I was going to tell you what justice and injustice. I was going to define it precisely. How do you like that? Boy, that'd get me fired from most universities. Well, the height of ignorance to think that you can define to anything. You know what justice and injustice is? You see, this man here has a right to defend his life by force if necessary, if I should try to take it. And he has a right, a divine right, to protect his liberty and his property if I should try to take it by force. I have the same right. This is the whole basis of our Constitution. She and I have that right and he has that right. Therefore, we don't have the right, I don't have the right to take his life, his liberty, or his property, nor has he got the right to take my life, my liberty, and my property. These are not rights created by government. They're not civil. They're unalienable. They belong to man before government. These are what are meant by unalienable rights. They are, some people, those who don't want to deny the divine, want to call them natural rights. Others want to call them God-given rights. But either way, they weren't given by government. All people agree with one thing. They're not government created. They are not civil. And cannot be. Now, seeing he has a right to defend his life, liberty, and property, I do too. Therefore, collectively, we have a right to form an association to protect collectively our lives, liberty, and property. But seeing we only have the right to protect our life, liberty, and property, and do not have the right to take another's life, liberty, or property, we have no power justly to give to the government the power to do what we don't have the power to do. How can I justly give to the government the power to take away his life, liberty, and property when I don't have that right in the first place? When a government does what we wouldn't let people do, it's unjust. It's legal because they are the government, but it's not just. Justice is when the government is limited to doing only those things we would tolerate people doing. If I can do through government that which I could not do of myself, those acts are unjust and immoral. That's a very precise definition, isn't it? All you have to do to apply to any law is say, would we let a man do that? Would we let a man go and take another person's property by force for his own use without his volunteering? Therefore, do you have a right to give to the government the power to do that very thing? Does the government have the right to do that very thing? No. You see, stealing is wrong regardless of how many people you get to steal with you. Merely getting a majority of thieves together doesn't make stealing moral. And that's what we're told today, isn't it? If a majority wants to steal, then nothing's wrong with stealing. I believe stealing is wrong regardless of how many crooks I find to join with me. And that's the whole rub, isn't it? The demagogues know that once you get a stealing people and you promote to give them something for nothing, they can't have something for nothing. Somebody's got to earn everything. You see, everything you live off of, everyone in this room, everything you're going to consume in your lifetime, somebody had to earn. Either you earned it or somebody else earned it, and you took it away from them. And there's two ways to take away what another man earns. You can steal it illegally or legally with a ballot. But you got to steal it. You're either going to live off the fruits of your own labor or off the fruits of another's labor. And if you give the government the power to allow you to live off the fruits of another's labor, you're going to be enslaved by that very government, along with the man you're stealing from. There is no other course. The thieves are the victims of their own folly, as well as the stolen from. But what the government understands, Mrs. Shuley, S-H-U-E-Y, if you would go with this lady, she has an important message for you. The important thing of a republic is a government, or form of government, in which the government is restricted to doing for the citizen only those things that the citizen had a right to do for himself, individually. That is, to protect the citizen's lives, liberty, and property from all who would endanger them, both internally and externally, either by intent or neglect. I can't drive 90 miles an hour down the street in front of this hotel because by my negligent act, I'm endangering the lives and properties of others. The government, therefore, has a just right to prohibit me from taking those actions. But if driving 90 miles an hour down the street had no possibility of injuring another's life or property, then the government has no power a just government to interfere with it. That's why they can drive 150 miles an hour at Indianapolis, and you're not supposed to do it on the street out front of this hotel. When a government is defending the lives and properties of its citizens from all who would endanger them by intent or neglect, either domestic or foreign, then that government is legitimate and its actions are just. When it goes beyond that and does for a citizen what we would not let a citizen do for himself, the government is criminal. A republic is a government restricted to just acts only and prohibited from entering in the areas of expropriation of property of its citizens. A democracy is a form of government that the very form of government, its whole existence, is for the expropriation of the earnings of another. And this has been true in the whole history of mankind, and is true in the very nature. There cannot be a good democracy. Why, until the First World War, the word democracy was never applied to the United States? It was a republic for which we stand. Remember? Read the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, and you will not find the word democracy contained therein. In fact, the very form of government our Constitution was written to prevent was democracy. It was the one form of government our founding fathers feared most. And the problems that they debated and argued over in drafting that Constitution was how to prevent your republic from degenerating into a democracy. How to prevent the government from robbing its citizens. How to prevent the do-gooders with their overworked waterworks going around and demanding that the government steal for the good of the people. You see, and this is the whole problem we've had. Let's take a look at some economics right now, very quickly. Let's take the word capital. We are told that there's some gigantic war in the world today between something called communism and capitalism. But notice that all of our great digesters of all information, that is, our experts, Bluntly and Pinkley and the rest of the crew, who tell us what to think about everything that happens, because you're too dumb to think about it yourself. And so they're going to digest all your news. You notice we get a new thing in the newspaper today. In the old days, you used to have on the front page and on the news page, news. It told you what happened. Editorials are on the editorial pages, the opinions of the newspapers. Now you get a melange, which is called interpretive reporting, which means, you dummy, you don't know what to think, so we're going to tell you right now what to think about everything we're going to tell you about what happened. And some of the things you don't aren't really good for you to know, so we're not going to tell you about them at all. And now that we've digested your everything for you, we don't need to put in the facts anymore. And you'll find in most news articles less than one sentence for every 40 sentences that contain news. The rest contains the opinions of the jerk who wrote the article. Now, I don't mind his jerky opinions as long as he puts them on the editorial page in honest reporting and keeps them off the news page. Just give me the stuff. I can make it up for myself, as somebody once said. I don't need you to do the job. You notice with all of this battle between communism and capitalism, they don't define the terms. Why don't they define the terms? You look, when two kids are out arguing, and one's saying, well, look at you did this and this and that, and the other one's calling the other guy a bunch of names. Stupid, the whole thing. What's the purpose of this? The one guy's right. He's trying to argue about the issues. The other guy is trying to shut the whole debate off, isn't he? The guy name caller. Notice the people who are calling names and don't want to discuss issues. Notice attacking the Birch Society. The total attack is a name calling. Nazi, fascist, racist, every name you can think of, but never talking about the issues. Never talking about republic, democracy, communism, capitalism, never talking about issues. Total name calling. Well, anybody knows this, ever been out in the street when 5 years old, knows what the answer to that one is. The one wants to silence the other because the other one's telling you the truth. You don't want it to come out, right? That's an obvious thing. Any 5-year-old would understand it, but after 20 years of education, we get all mixed up. What's the attention? You couldn't sell this stuff to 5-year-olds. They wouldn't buy it. Let's define the word capitalism. By the way, until lunch, all I'm doing is making definitions, if you notice. Because until we get a language, a common language, we can't even start discussing what I came here to talk about. I haven't even got to it yet. This is all introduction. I hope you know that. What is capitalism? In economics, there are only two kinds of goods in the world. All goods, all material things fall into two groups. Economic goods and non-economic goods. You can't beat that one for a definition. How do you tell the difference? You got to pay for the economic goods. If there's a price on it, it's economic. If there's not a price on it, it's non-economic. How's that for clarity? That's the first 2 years of economics. Now we go on to the third year. In the third year, you learn this great truth. By the way, in the average college course, you see, you get less than about 20 minutes of real material for 15 weeks. Honestly, you go to look at the major university, and you split the courses down and down and down so everybody can be an expert in a subject so small nobody else would ever muscle in on. And every faculty member wants to be an expert, so if you've got 2,000 faculty members, you've got to break up what you're teaching into 2,000 little separate segments, all of which are so small that they don't constitute more than 20 minutes worth of honest material. Those of you who have been in college in the last 20 years know that's true. The average college course could be told in 20 minutes what it contained. Of any value. Or even not value. In fact, there's a good course that you can get that much out of. It does keep them off the streets for a while. No, it doesn't. Now they got signs. They used to just be out there, mugging a few people on their own in private enterprise. Nowadays they march in ranks while they go out and threaten the people with violence and mayhem. Because they've been educated. Now they know how to be filthier. You can't get that naturally. Even a cat cleans itself. Right.